In all their history, have the Necrons ever been able to cure biotransference, to undo the curse that Bargain, the Satan and the Sand King bound them all into? Maybe. That's what we will explore today through this adaptation. Let's begin. Oberon belongs to the Sotek dynasty, and he is the bodyguard of Overlord Xandrek, who believes himself to be flesh, and those he fights to be rebellious Necrons. Oberon helps him with this. They're on campaign, trying to add a star to the dominion of the Stormlord. They are fighting the Mechanicus, in the novel severed by Nate Crowley. The Overlord, by the way, is also a military genius. They win the fight and leave on the flagship Yamar. They are given a new task by the Stormlord. They're sent to a planet to meet an old ally. Dude is called Setek. He and Xandrek were old allies and confidants and more. Together they invade Doat. It was a tomb world they could take back for the Stormlord. 5 Septeks blow the bloody doors off to this world, and they realise the planet they're on is a severed world where those in the tombs were to be woken by the autonomous spirit of the tomb world. But sometimes, as here, the minds of the Necrons who woke would have bad recall of who they were and what they did. And when the minds of all are subject to this spirit, and those that were to command it don't wake properly, it would try to run the entire tomb world and repel any invaders as it saw them. Even other Necrons, some severed worlds, even start wars of mindless conquest, sending their legions to uncorrupted tomb worlds. Oberon's forces are outnumbered, but he has a plan. From the time he spent alone on Gidrim, as the tomb world there had ground to life, Oberon knew well the protocols by which an autonomous spirit commanded its warriors. After taking inventory of its assets on awakening, it would have assigned a degree of decision-making capacity to a single unit in each region, enslaved every lower-ranking asset to the executive function of that command node. If Oberon could get deep enough to find the local node and extinguish it, the warriors in the region would fall into complete disarray. The chaos would only last long enough for the spirit to identify a new nodal command point. But with its wits still sluggish from sleep, that might be long enough for the Legion at the tomb's entrance to press the advantage. He learns more about Setek. He was also an explorer of a kind, tasked with looking into places which had been dark since the War in Heaven, and were possible stripping them of useful assets. This was how Setek had come upon the Eldritch cloaking technology his fleet and troops now moved under, and how, just recently, he had found Doat. He says, "Let me tell you something, Oberon. At the heart of this world lies a treasure of incalculable value to our people, and it lies in the same sanctum as the core, which houses the spirits of this world. Our campaign must be a fast one, to move down through the world and breach that sanctum before enough of the tomb is woken and we are overwhelmed. To achieve such a feat will require not only our combined might, but also leadership, untainted by either doubt or madness. Xandrek, noble vanguard, is no longer possessed of such quality. On Doat, he has seen the very first sliver of the truth of the world, and it near cracked him. He's too gentle a soul for this new galaxy. You must act out of mercy, if nothing else." Over weeks, the invading Necron forces moved forward, but slowly. Setek tells Oberon what they are fighting for on this tomb world. He says, "There was a lone cryptech of singular genius who woke from sleep hundreds of millennia before his time, and long ahead of the rest of his crown world. As far as he knew, he was the only necronty awake in the whole slumbering vastness of the galaxy, and the isolation made him strange." Setek sighed and ran a finger over the carvings in the wall. He spent an age down here in the dark, consumed by wild theory and scrawling his workings on the walls, and then, when at last he had reached his conclusions, he found they were more than even his capacious mind could hold, and his sanity cracked. But in his madness, he built something, an engine of sorts, at this world centre, whose purpose we can barely guess at. Whatever this engine was when the cryptech activated it, the mind of every being interred here, from the pharaoh himself to the lowliest warrior, disappeared. That's why our esteemed friend, the autonomous spirit, is now using everything in this world as a toy. So their minds wiped? Asked Oberon, confused. Not just wiped, Oberon. If the stories are to be believed, and from everything I can make out of these carvings they are, the minds of the dynasty were transported, spirited away, to be restored elsewhere. Where I do not know. It may not even have been in this reality. But if the text on these walls suggests what I suspect, they were born anew in bodies of flesh. As he thinks on this, Xandric appears to Oberon in a rough cloth cloak, saying it's his disguise here amongst the peasantry. Remember, he still thinks things are pre-biotransference, and everything he sees fits within that scope. And, at his order, they jump into a chasm. It leads them to landing on Xandric's barge. Duat has been hollowed out long ago, its mantle chewed through by the swarms of mining constructs, in order to provide the raw material for its fleets and armies. To keep the crust above from collapsing, the diggers had left columns of rock leads thick, but the spaces between them were large enough for fleets of voidcraft to pass through. They also see how many necrons there are in the Tombworld, that their task to win is essentially hopeless. Xandric says Setek had once been Xandric's brother, and he believes he will move against him, steal the spell to turn necrons into metal bodies as his damaged mind sees it. He says for a while he doubted Oberon's loyalty, thought he might betray him at Setek's urgings, but he was very wrong. At his master's command, they translated to the core of a Tombworld. It looked like the place a cryptech would spend 100,000 years and lose their mind. Oberon also saw a large ziggurat, where the pharaoh's sarcophagus, normally in that place, had been moved, and there was a spider-like scaffold of machinery there instead. At the engine's centre, there was a necron tier. This had to be the machine's architect, the mad cryptech, who had turned his crown world into a monster. Setek joins them. He admits he used the pair of them to get the treasure. He says the engine, that engine behind you, for all I understand it really does exactly what I said it does. It sends whole worlds full of necron minds elsewhere and leaves behind empty bodies. That's why I want it as a weapon to wipe out rival dynasties and puppet their legions. For all I know, and there's plenty of evidence in the cryptech's workings to support the idea, the minds thus displaced might well end up somewhere better. Oberon pins Setek to a wall with the war scythe he held and saves Xandric from one of Setek's commanded necron hounds. The animals could slip in and out of reality, but so could Oberon. But with every victory he gained, he lost little of his own memory. He sacrifices his memory of his love for his master and wakes, knowing little more now than he simply serves Xandric, who is now fighting Setek. Between them and not knowing what the device was anymore, Oberon destroys the engine and his enemy by pushing Setek into it, as he knew he hated him, but not why. After, with the device destroyed, the severed worlds and its autonomous spirit was too, and though not known, perhaps also the necrons and their hopes for reversing biotransference. Xandric wants to return to his ship. Oberon nearly said yes, but then he remembered the engine's true purpose, or what it might have been. It's so hard to recall now. But our souls, Xandric, the machine, it could give us our souls back. It could give us our bodies. Please, Lord, let's at least take part of it with us, so we can know for sure. Xandric says he has loyalty, so he must have a soul. Even if we all cease to be flesh and blood millions of years ago, which of course I don't believe for a moment, Xandric actually winked. Wouldn't it have suited us better to live in denial of that? As some fools might say I have done, wouldn't it be better, Oberon, to just accept our fate and enjoy immortality for the everlasting life of merry campaigning it has proved to be? Oberon stared hard at Xandric, unsure of what he was hearing. You old bastard, you knew all along. I knew nothing of the sort, old friend, but since you seem to be labouring under some delusion that you're a soulless machine, I thought I should at least make some attempt to set you straight. Xandric stood up then and patted his thigh for Oberon to join him. Come now, soldier, up on your feet and let's return to the flagship. If we're quick about it, we can have this all cleared up in time for a truly astonishing feast. Oberon, ever loyal, obeyed his lord. He would have wept, but he had no tears. And if you enjoyed this video on the Necrons, check out this one as well.